This year's silly season in Formula One seems to have stretched way beyond the summer break, as teams like Alpine and Haas still haven't locked down their driver lineups for next year. And now, there are at least 4 drivers playing musical chairs to fill in the final 3 spots on the grid. So, could Pierre Gasly move to the French team, or could we see another rookie enter the fray? Well, let's find out. First off, Alpine's chaotic transfer season gets even more complicated. It's been a wild couple of months for the Alpine, as not only did they lose their veteran driver Fernando Alonso, but they also got snubbed by his replacement. Of course, we're talking about the young Aussie star Oscar Piastri, who despite seemingly having a gentleman's agreement with the team, decided to go to McLaren instead. That said, there was never any formal agreement in place, so he had every right to go wherever he wanted. Besides, the fact that the French team wasn't ready to hand out a longer contract to Alonso was kinda disrespectful anyway, so many people would say that this is just karma catching up to them now. Let's come back to the present day though, as one thing's crystal clear. Alpine needs a driver next to Esteban Ocon. Now, you'd think that people would be clamoring to get into that seat because, well, Formula One seats don't open up like this very often, but just the sheer amount of contenders gunning for the spot and all the logistics of potentially bringing them into the team aren't exactly easy to deal with. As a matter of fact, it'd be fair to say that they're in a conundrum right now, as things just aren't clicking for their potential targets. Plus, with the season closer only a couple of months away, they're kind of running out of time as well. After all, they'd ideally want to head into off-season testing with a confirmed driver lineup. Following up, Gasly needs some dominoes to fall for his move. With his Red Bull contract coming to an end, the Frenchman Pierre Gasly is the prime contender to make the switch to Alpine. And to be honest, the move makes perfect sense too because 1, he's already proven his mettle in AlphaTauri. On top of that, this seems like the appropriate career path for him, as not only will he move into a team from his country, but the ceiling for improvement's also much higher than Red Bull's feeder outfit. So if Helmut Marko's willing to let him go and Alpine wants him to slot in, then what's the holdup? Well, you see, the thing is that Horner wants IndyCar driver Colton Herta to replace the Frenchman. The American driver, though, just doesn't have enough super license points to make his way into the sport. In fact, he's 8 points short of the 40 required in total, making matters complicated for everyone involved. Oh, and it's not like he's not good enough to earn those points or anything. The issue here is that IndyCar drivers just aren't awarded enough points by the FIA, leaving them behind the pecking order in comparison to rookies coming from Formula 2. Now, if you remember, others like Max Verstappen didn't have to go through these hoops to get into the sport, so Helmut Marko would want to fast-track the American as well. That said, with opposition from other team bosses and the F1 CEO, the chances of that happening are very slim. What's more, Red Bull isn't willing to promote other drivers either. Of course, you're probably wondering why Red Bull is so keen on bringing Herta into the sport. Well, the fact of the matter is that with the rise in Formula One's popularity in the US thanks to Drive to Survive, everyone's keen to bring American drivers into their roster for commercial reasons. Oh, and it's not just the teams either, as even the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem's been super vocal about needing a US driver on the grid. Having said that, the reason why the other team bosses are so against the idea of signing an IndyCar driver is pretty simple. They've all got a stake in the current ladder that includes F2 and F3, so they want rookies from within the sport rather than quote-unquote outsiders. Plus, the teams also fear that if an American's fast-tracked to a license like the infamous case of Michael Andretti and McLaren, then the resulting failure could actually end up damaging the sport in the long run instead. Also, just in case you were wondering, no, Horner isn't too keen on promoting one of their younger drivers in F2 either. Like, if you go by the succession line, then Liam Lawson's the next junior prime to enter the sport. But again, they don't think that he's ready yet to make it into the big leagues. As a matter of fact, the Red Bull team boss has even said that the only driver capable of triggering Gasly's release would be Colton Herta. Up next, another young Aussie could step into Piastri's place. Now, obviously, Alpine doesn't have to take Pierre Gasly on board if there are plenty of other capable drivers willing to take that second seat. Besides, the logistics of getting the Frenchman out of that AlphaTauri seat are way too complicated. We mean, even Mick Schumacher's entry into his seat would require a lot of moving parts, including an entry from Porsche. So there's always a world in which they look at someone else. Like, even though Piastri's immensely talented, there's plenty of other fish in the sea as well. And just so it happens, the driver below is also a young Australian, Jack Doohan. Now, being the son of a motorsports legend, he's already got the background to make it into the sport. But even more importantly, his performances in Formula 2 have been nothing short of spectacular either. For instance, he's currently sitting in 4th position, just 11 points behind 3rd. On top of that, getting a super license would also be really easy for him thanks to his past results. Oh, and let's not forget that he's also had some tests within Formula 1, so he's essentially a finished product already and only needs a straight route into the sport. That being said, it looks like Alpine isn't in a hurry to make its final decision. In fact, Otmar Schnafnauer's been more than happy to let all of the candidates have a chance to present their cases, as evident by their invitations to the Budapest test, not to mention Nick de Vries, who's raised his stock. After a spectacular debut P9 finish in Monza, it's not a surprise to see the young Dutch Frenchman's name being mentioned among the sports circles. After all, he's done what most of the other F2 drivers haven't, which is showing his chops in an actual Grand Prix. On top of that, he's also one of the drivers to test for Alpine alongside Doohan, Giovinazzi, and Herta, so there's definitely a big chunky chance that the French team could pick him over the rest of the drivers. Plus, he's not a young and feisty driver either, as he's already 27, meaning that he'll probably gel pretty well with potential teammate Ocon. That said, his recent result has really caught the attention of teams across the paddock, and now Alpine isn't the only team that's in the race to sign him. Like, we've got outfits like Williams, AlphaTauri, and Haas trying to secure De Vries' signature. But even though it might take some convincing, we're sure that the French team's got a better long-term project than the rest of the teams on the list. Other than that, Mick Schumacher's also available, as he's leaving the Ferrari driver program and could end up moving away from Haas at the end of this year. Oh, and as far as Ricciardo's concerned, he's essentially not being favored by Alpine right now because, well, they didn't have the best of divorces. So the only probable option for him seems to be the reserve driver at Mercedes. Finally, Antonio Giovinazzi has a real chance to make a comeback. Antonio Giovinazzi's in a similar position to what Ocon went through a few years ago. We mean, he's got great potential, and Ferrari seems to rate him super highly as well. It's just that there haven't been any openings for him so far. Plus, there's the issue of his lackluster performances last season as well, although most people chalk that up to having a bad car rather than his own fault. The bottom line, though, is that he's a safe pair of hands and has plenty of Grand Prix experience in the sport. Like, he's easily the most experienced of the bunch apart from Gasly, with 62 starts to his name. Besides, his Monza outing in FP1 last weekend proved that he's still got what it takes to perform on the big stage. So the French outfit's definitely got a ton of options at its disposal, and to be honest, it's just a matter of sifting through their options and finding a driver that doesn't bring more drama than he's worth. After all, they could do with some calm seasons after everything that they've been through. That's a wrap for this video. Who do you think will end up signing for Alpine in 2023? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.